Good evening, guys. We are going to be discussing major changes in the home buying process. In the last week or two, I'm sure you have seen there's going to be some major changes in how buyers agents get compensated for their services, which could be a trickle down effect to home buyers, right? So, NAR, National Association of Realtors, which is the organizations that realtors are governed under, or association they're a part of, that help along with their real estate, right? So there's a difference between a realtor, a real estate agent, and a realist. In order to be considered a realtor, you have to be a part of the National Association of Realtors. If you're not a realtor, then you're either a real estate agent, a real estate professional, or a realist. So that's a little background history on that. The major changes that we're discussing are for years. For years, when we have been doing real estate transactions, there's something called the multiple listing system. The multiple listing system, or MLS, is the system where real estate agents put their listings into their system so that if I'm the listing agent, 123 Main Street gets pushed out to however many agents who have access to the multiple listing system. This system also pushes the listings out to Realtor.com, Zillow, uh, wherever you can find listings, Kazoo, Hubzoo, whatever, right? They push those listings out there. What this does is it attracts attention and eyes to that listing. I'm going somewhere with this story to give you a background history. So, with that being said, I am the listing agent. I meet with Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Mr. and Mrs. Seller is going to sell their home for $365, and I have agreed with them as compensation for my services a 6% listing fee, meaning whatever the sales price of the property is, it is 6% of that sales price. Now, as consideration, knowing, hey, I'm one agent, I'm one person, and if I put this in my multiple listing system and I share this compensation of 6% that I've agreed with the seller, then instead of it being one person helping to sell 123 Main Street, there's 30,000, 40,000, however many people are in that system that have access to it. That gives that listing more exposure to more buyers than just the pool of buyers that I would bring in as the listing agent, right? Okay. From there, over the since 2019, there's been a lawsuit going on where sellers feel as though they have been paying the buyer's agents compensation. They were complaining and saying they didn't know how much they were paying. They didn't know they were paying the buyer's agent compensation. They felt like realtors were making too much money helping them sell their home. That's why some people are against real estate agents or realtors. Some think they get paid too much. But then the true value of a real estate agent is not really put out there, right? So what they did was they filed a class action lawsuit back in maybe September, October of 2023. They were discussing, hey, NAR is being sued for like $3 billion, right? Because they said, hey, we want our money back. We paid these people. We didn't know it cost us millions and billions of dollars because we paid these agents, and they weren't working for us. They were working on the buyer's behalf, right? So NAR, instead of going through the motions, instead of continuing to spend millions of dollars to fight this battle, they decided to settle. They decided to settle on $418 million. $418 million, right? So now they've won, they are going to be changing the way that buyers agents get compensated. So typically buyers agents, 9 times out of 10, they represent the buyer, and the buyer typically doesn't have to pay them compensation. When I say compensation, they typically don't have to pay them anything for representing them, because it would come from, so there's 2 points of views. The commission, the compensation is coming from the sellers amount that they would net, but the buyer is bringing the money to the table for the financing, right? The buyer's bringing the money for the financing. So some agents are saying, hey, the buyer's really paying for the compensation. Some people are saying, hey, the seller's paying for the compensation because it comes off of their proceeds. I see it both ways, right? So now that the ruling has come into play, unless before July the 1st or sometime after that, they change the ruling, the compensation that would normally go in a multiple listing system will not go into the multiple listing system. So there's a huge uproar. Some people feel as though buyers are getting hurt. Some people feel as though real estate agents were making too much money anyway. Some people feel as though sellers are going to net more money, because one thing I know for that's true. The housing prices are not going down because the seller doesn't have to pay 6, 7, or 5% compensation to agents. That doesn't bring down the price of housing. What that does is that nets the seller more money on their bottom line, if they decide they don't want to, or the listing agent doesn't want to pay the buyer's agent. What does that mean? So as a buyer, a home buyer, and this is not just first-time home buyers, this is whoever's purchasing a home. Buyers may have to pay some sort of compensation to their real estate professional so they can be paid. I've had agents that I've talked to who potentially thinking about a retainer, which means currently right now, majority of the real estate professionals, they don't get a buyer's brokerage agreement signed. They do not charge a retainer for their services, and they're pretty much working for free until they sell that home. And if you, as the buyer, decide to go somewhere else, they don't get compensated. They don't get compensated. They don't get reimbursed gas. They don't get reimbursed time. They lose. They're at a loss, right? More agents are probably going to start charging some sort of retainer. If I sat down with a buyer and my retainer is $500, then the retainer for the $500 gets applied to whatever you may have to pay me as compensation. When I say me, I'm talking using an example as an agent. The agents at that point then have something from the buyer, because a lot of times buyers aren't ready. They decide to back out. They just want to see houses. So this does 2 things. It keeps people serious, and it also, I think it keeps them committed, because no one wants to lose money that they don't really have. So that's one thing that buyers could do. I mean, that buyers agents may do. The other thing is they may have a flat fee. Okay, this is the service that you want. My flat fee is $4,000. A buyer could have to pay that to their realtor at time of closing. So that's another way that it could be added to your closing costs. Let's say the listing agent and the seller's agent don't want to compensate you, don't want to compensate the agent for their services at all. The agent may have to get 3% from you. 3% of $200,000 sale is an additional $6,000. That's $6,000 on top of your down payment and your closing costs. So that's additional funds. Somewhere or another, the agent, there's going to be something where agents are now compensated from the buyer for their services. It could be where they made up the difference of the seller was to give 2%. The way that this particular buyer agent works, they want 3%. So it just kind of all depends. That means you have to provide the additional 1%. On that same $200,000 house, the seller's paying $4,000 to that buyer. The buyer is, to the buyer's agent, the buyer is now going to have to chip in 1%, which is an additional $2,000. Right now, this is all speculation. Up until July the 1st, 2024, everybody's still doing business as usual. I have seen some agents post some changes. However, right now, everybody is still doing business as usual. So let me give you some more backstory, guys. I'm telling you, this is going somewhere. So technically, the commission has always been negotiable, meaning there's never been a set or flat set fee that the Real National Association of Realtors or Realtors nationwide have come together and say, hey, we are going to charge across the board 6% to anybody and everybody. That agreement has never been put in place. So it's always been negotiable. If you had the ability as a listing agent to negotiate 7%, 10%, then you could charge 7% or 10%. If you didn't have the ability to negotiate 7% or 10%, and you could only do 5%, you could do 5%. Commissions were negotiable, are negotiable, and always have been negotiable. Now, is there a standard fee of what people charge? No, but that it's a way that businesses do business. You can go to, I'm going to use stores that's in this area. You can go to Walmart, you can go to Kroger, and you can go to Publix. And you can all go get a loaf of bread. At Walmart, the bread may be $3.97. At Kroger's, it might be $4.39. And at Publix, it might be $4.99. All the same loaf of Jefferson bread, right? That doesn't mean that the bread that's higher from from Kroger or Publix is any better than Walmart. But that's the way that Walmart prices their products. That's the way Publix prices their products. And that's the way Kroger prices their products. So what are you saying, Kevin? What I'm saying is each individual company has a way that they want to conduct business, the way they want to do business, and how much they want to charge. And that's the way I believe real estate agents are going to do. I believe if I was to open up a brokerage, my history of what commissions that I normally charge were based off of what I was used to charging. So if I understand my bottom line is that I need to charge X amount of dollars so my agent can be compensated and I can compensate other agents and run my facility, that's the way that I can or I'm going to conduct business. There's never been a rule of you have to charge this amount of money and that amount of money. Okay, I got the backstory out. Now here's where it is. A lot of people believe that buyers are now going to have to pay those flat fees, those 1%, depending on what's offered to the agents in the MLS. What does that mean for sellers? That could potentially mean that their house stays on the market longer because you don't have as many eyes on it. That could potentially mean for the buyer that instead of me now just having to come up with down payment, closing costs, I've got to come up with compensation for my agent. A lot of buyers just have enough to buy. There's a ton of buyers who use down payment assistance programs, state bonds, and grants because they qualify numbers wise, but in terms of actually physically having the money, they need assistance. They need assistance with down payment assistance. They need assistance with closing costs. Like most buyers need some type of assistance, even especially first time home buyers. So with them potentially having to come up with another fee that they charge, it could potentially be the way that business is conducted. But what does that do? That may just delay when a buyer can buy. If they need $15,000 for down payment and closing costs, and now all of a sudden they need an additional $3,000, they're going to have to ask for, they're going to have to save or figure out where they can get that $3,000 from. Hey guys, this is Kevin Jefferson, the People's Lender. If you are following us or just joining this conversation, I've been going through the history of what I know and what I've researched on compensation and major changes that are happening in the real estate market. Things that could potentially, at this point, we're discussing what could potentially cost buyers more money. It could potentially cost sellers properties being on the market longer. It also affects how real estate agents are now going to potentially conduct business. If they're going to change their business model, are they going to be charging buyers more so often? All of these things, it's all speculation at this point because none of the changes have particularly been made, but this could affect the first time home buyers hugely and immensely because now they have to come up with additional funds. If you're new to the channel, do me a huge favor and hit the subscribe button. Also, if you have any questions, I will be answering questions tonight. Drop them over in the chat and I will get to them. But I want to make sure I give you a good understanding of what's going on in the market and how you could or could not be potentially affected. So now that you may have to have the additional $3,000 as we discussed, now you may have to save it. You may have to get a gift from a family member. You may have to forego the process until you can come up with the funds. What happens if the seller doesn't have the ability to give you seller's assistance for closing costs? Those are all things that play a part into the buyer buying. The big part that a lot of people are also mentioning is the financing piece. As of now, you cannot finance in a a buyer's agent's compensation. Not with FHA, definitely not with VA, not with USDA or conventional financing. So the buyer is literally potentially going to have to come up with those potential funds, or if the listing agent and the seller are only contributing 2%, that agent has to decide, is that what I'm going to take in compensation? Now let me be clear. 2% of $200,000 is $4,000 for a transaction. So that's not a little bit of money, but it's also sometimes not as much as it could be if they could do more or charge more, because agents work hard. They make, there's some deals as agents, they show 3 houses and boom, somebody likes it. Or they go to a new construction and they only show a couple of houses and floor plans and they like it, and boom, they made their $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 if that's what it is, right? But then you also have where they show a person 20 houses, 30 houses. And sometimes the houses are an hour and a half away. Like I had one realtor drive 2 hours away from where she lived to show buyers houses. And she didn't just show them one, and she didn't just show them one time. So all of that time and wear and tear that realtors have or put on their car affects their ability to do business somewhere else, right? So the compensation piece, a realtor is going to want to be paid or compensated for what they think their time is worth. Just like when, buyers go to their job, they expect they're not going to accept the job making a whole lot less than what they think they're worth. If they have a degree, if they have the experience, like all of those things come into play and they are a factor. So, buyers potentially have a huge, they could be affected immensely. Will there be changes? Yes, I believe there'll be changes. How soon are we going to see this come into play? It could happen years down the road, right? But right now, buyers definitely need to make sure that they're in position, that they have their time, understand what they need to do, and they get with an agent and they understand what the agent's compensation is or what they have to pay. Because the other thing is, you'll get a copy of the buyer's brokerage agreement with information on how you have to compensate them or how your agent's going to be compensated. You have to read it and you're going to have to sign it. A lot of agents probably should have been utilizing the buyer's brokerage agreement. The problem is getting the buyer to commit. Most buyers don't want to sign anything because they don't want to be committed. So you see what I'm saying? Like, this is where so you have to have loyalty. Buyers want agents to be loyal and show them everything that they can and be on time. Agents want buyers to say, "Hey, I'm your guy, I'm your gal that I'm showing you houses. If you have any questions pertaining to these houses, reach out to me." But some buyers just don't want to sign that agreement. Some agents don't offer the agreement, or they didn't offer the agreement. So I believe that business is going to be conducted differently. I think a little bit more professionally. I think there's going to be more skin in the game from the buyer. But I don't think that it will stop real estate to a halt. Again, I think it's the biggest crux, the biggest lie that they're telling is that sellers are saying, or people think that housing prices are going to go down because the sellers don't have to pay the buyer's agent and the listing agent, which is not true. The seller's just going to net more money. And if sellers become savvy and say, "Hey, I'm only going to give you 3%, let the buyer take care of the buyer's agent," they net more money. Or the listing agent may get 6%, and because they feel as if though they have to market more and do open houses and more photos and more videos to get the house sold, because there could be potentially less people looking, that also could mean that they're going to offer less compensation. It's so it's a big change. Let me take a look. It says this sucks for first-time home buyers because they barely have enough money for the down payment and closing costs. How is this good for buying agents? They have to level up. So when they're going, brown sugar, when they're going to negotiate the contract for you, they're also going to have to be better negotiators at negotiating compensation for themselves from the listing agent as well as from the potential buyer. Now, in commercial real estate, it's common that they negotiate their compensation for the transaction, and sometimes they have to get that compensation from, and most of the time in commercial, they have to get that compensation. Commercial is different. Residential is definitely going to see an effect. I don't, so while I'm talking and discussing, if you're out there and you're listening, I'd like to see your insights and thoughts. How do you feel with the fact that you now may have to be paying the compensation for your buyer's agent? Also, what I want to know is, if in order to get around using the buyer's agent, are you going to go directly to the seller's agent whose sign is in front of the yard? definitely, drop that in the chat and let me know what you think. If you're watching the replay, drop it in the comments. If you're watching it live, drop it in the chat right now. So the gift and the curse. If you go directly to the listing agent, yes, you have someone negotiating directly with the seller. That listing agent still may charge you compensation. So are you really saving money? Or if you go directly to the seller's agent and their responsibility, their fiduciary responsibility is to the seller. If anything were ever to happen and you had to go to court, they would be there on behalf of the seller because that's who their agreement's with. So I also thought or heard someone say, hey, they'll probably start, going without, potentially could stop using a buyer's agent. Some people could not use a buyer's agent and maybe go straight to an attorney to have them draft up the contract. That's a fee charge. Attorney's going to charge for their time. And if you're going back and forth negotiating and you have this attorney working on your behalf, or changing the contract as you need changes, depending on how many times you negotiate, that's going to run up a bill as well. And at the end of the day, you may still also be paying the same amount you would have paid a buyer's agent. That could give attorneys an opportunity to increase their fee. And see, so you're probably thinking, well, in a real estate transaction, I already have to hire an attorney to do the title work. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think the attorney who draws up the sales contract can actually do the title work. So you'll be paying 2 attorneys' fees. I'm pretty sure down payment assistance programs won't allow for you to use any additional money to go towards an agent's compensation. We already discussed that financing won't allow for it. Yep. Also, financing as it stands right now won't allow for you to compensate the agent in the contract. So instead of you having your $18,000, $19,000 available to purchase now, you may have to figure out where those additional funds are coming from. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. That's going to change along with, interest rates increasing, decreasing, housing prices increasing, and increasing because they haven't decreased. Some of the same people looking for the market to crash, looking for record low interest rates again. It's going to be some changes. Some other changes they're looking to make are jump fees. Jump fees are fees that lenders charge that we had to charge based off of the changes that were made to the way we did business after the collapse of the real estate market and them implementing licensing back in 2010. The CFPB, who governs a lot of those fees, are now looking at what they call lender junk fees. Not only are they looking at lender junk fees, you also have President Biden, who said that he was going to be looking into title fees that attorneys' offices charge buyers as well. So if you take buyers agents who now may have to be compensated by the buyer, the lender may have to charge differently if those things go through, and attorneys' offices may have to charge different. There's going to be a lot of shakeups in the real estate market that we see. The real estate market as we see it now is definitely going to make a shift. It's also going to potentially make a lot of changes as we go along. I've got a couple questions. It says this could limit the amount of buyers. It could, or prolong how long the buyers or when the buyers get into the market. comment. I'm definitely going with a buyer's agent. It's not relying on the seller's agent to look out for my best interest. Yep, that definitely makes sense. Because you don't know. You really don't know if they have your best interest. My opinion, it's worth paying a buyer's agent. It's worth it. It's worth paying a buyer's agent because think about what they do. When you're at work at your 9 to 5, and some people don't have the ability to hop on the phone when they can hop off, that buyer's agent is in the background negotiating with the listing agent. They're talking to the attorney's office to make sure that the title work or settlement set up. They're setting up the inspections, the home inspections, the termite inspection. They're coordinating the closing date. They're talking to the lender to make sure everything's fine. If something happens or goes awry, they're getting amendments and addendums to make those changes to make sure that when you go to the closing table, you are not stuck or get screwed in any fashion. Most agents, right? So they do a lot of work. If a buyer who was a novice or didn't know exactly what they were doing, are not up to speed on those changes or the time frames that need to be met in contracts, they could cost themselves earnest money. Heck, there are some agents who don't know about the changes or what to do because it's repetition. It has to be with time. You may run across the sellers, and then it may be for sale by owner. It might be more for sale by owners. They may say, "Hey, I don't want to pay them. I don't want to pay 6%. I can sell it on my own," which some people think they can do now. So then you have a transaction where you have two people who have never sold real estate or don't know about selling real estate, trying to conduct the largest purchase in one person's life and the largest sale in the other person's life. Somewhere or another, it's going to get messed up. Does a buyer really need an agent? In my opinion, yes. I think they do need an agent. Unless you have the ability to negotiate and get the deal closed and done yourself, I think that they need an agent. Because I'm gonna tell you, if you don't have an agent, you know who you're gonna rely on? The lender. And that's not what we do. When someone comes to me with a for sale by owner and they don't have a buyer's representation, they try to lean on me, and I know what I'm doing, but that's not what I do. Like, at the end of the day, the stuff and questions that you have, I can answer, and I'll answer to a surface level, but you need that buyer's agent. Even if you go to that buyer's agent in that transaction and say, "Hey, I'll pay you, 1% of the sales price if you can look over the contract and help me from here." It's up to that agent to decide whether they want to or not. But in a transaction, you definitely need somebody who knows what the heck they're doing. And you can't rely on your lender to help you out in this transaction. How does it affect VA loan users since we're not required to pay agent fees? It is it's going to be up to the agent for them to try to negotiate with the seller as to how much they're going to get compensated, or the seller's agent what they're going to get compensated. If they're only offering 2%, that person has to decide whether they're willing to accept the 2%. At the end of the day, 2% of $300,000 is $6,000. Like, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. Would I walk away from $6,000 if I had a buyer in hand? If I was a buyer's agent? No, not at all. I wouldn't. Is it the 3% that you normally get? Would you normally get 9,000? Possibly, but I'm not going to walk away from 6. So they have to. The buyer's agent has to decide. And I'll tell you this, purple elephant. If that person doesn't want to accept the $6,000, I'm 99.9% sure you'll find another agent who's willing to take that 6,000. So, I mean, you may have to shop agents. You know, some people just don't. That what they rather do is get higher checks, and if that's not high enough for them, then you move on. You know, I always heard a guy say, "Some will, some won't. Who's next?" Lisa McCoy, can a buyer still ask the seller to pay their agent? Yes, they can. That's where I was saying that the agent needs to be able to negotiate their own funds, right? So if I have an agent who can't negotiate their own compensation, is that somebody I want to work with negotiating on a house for me? That's something to think about as well. But yeah, they can still. So all those things still, Lisa, all those things still come into play. Buyer's agent can still request a certain portion of the compensation from the listing agent or the seller. It's not going to be in the multiple listing system, so they have to negotiate it. And then you can still ask the sellers for seller's assistance. Like all of those things as of now still happen. It's just the way that buyers are presented with their compensation. They have to negotiate that piece, and their negotiation piece means it has to potentially come from the seller as well as from the buyer. No problem, Purple Elephant. I'm glad I could answer your question. Hey, guys, we're going to do a little reset of the room. We are talking about some major changes that could affect home buyers in this current market from now to the end of time or until they make changes, right? If you are a home buyer and you're looking to purchase a home, I would love to hear your feedback as to when or how do you feel about potentially having to pay more money and pay money to your buyer's agent to represent you. If you're looking at it currently, if you could drop it in the chat or wherever you're looking at it from. If you are looking at this on the replay, drop it in the comment section. Give me your thoughts on what you think about buyers having to pay more. And if you're looking and you're watching and you have questions pertaining to this topic or something to go along with real estate, I am here to answer your questions for you. It says, can we avoid having to possibly pay agents fees if we purchase before July 1st? Yes, ma'am. It doesn't take into consideration until July 1st of 2024. Yep, it doesn't take place until the changes don't take shape until July 1st of 2024. Hey guys, if you are also on this live and you have not joined my newsletter, do me a huge favor. The link will be below to join my free newsletter. I send it out twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week. We never sell your list. We never give it away. We also we send when we're going to potentially go live. We send out urgent topics. We send out the video if you missed the live. So it's a valuable resource. We have great content that I think that we put together in our, and it's not long. It's not long at all. It just hits and quits. It lets you know about trending topics. It lets you know about things that's going on in the real estate market. So do me a huge favor. If you want to be a part of the newsletter, the free newsletter, the link will be below for you to register, and we'll have a free email gift for you for registering. If you're here and you're part of the newsletter, or you aren't a part of the newsletter and you're not a part of our Facebook group, do me a huge favor. Click on the link below and join our Facebook group. We send out messages 5 times a week. We talk about mortgage tips. We give trivia questions. We do Winning Wednesday. We give FICO information. We got mortgage tips on Tuesday. We have people winning. We're starting to grow. We're having people have houses under contract. People go to closings. We're in here celebrating each other. And as we continue to grow, we'll have more and more people who can be cheerleaders for each other, because sometimes you don't have someone to cheer on for you. So definitely do us a huge favor and join the group. You will not regret it. Let me see. Zandra, okay, that I don't get it, Zandra. Okay, that's what I wasn't, or you wasn't sure of. She says she's buying in the weeks to come. You got that right. You got that right. Free your mindset. I feel terrible. If it isn't one thing, it's another. Just more disparity. I can see your point. You know, some people scrape and scrounge to come up with their funds. So one thing as people, we're very resourceful. If we want something bad enough, we'll find a way to get it. Whether it's saving, it's borrowing, collectively coming together, working a little harder, selling something. Um, we're resourceful people. The fact that housing prices are increasing, interest rates are a little bit higher, and we may have an added charge does look very disparaging, but it is not discouraging. I truly believe where there's a will, there's a way. It may take a little longer than normal. However, I believe that if you work hard enough and you get with a knowledgeable team who gives you a game plan, I think you can get to the finish line. It makes it seem as though it's a negative to buy a house. What's the minimum down payment for conventional versus FHA? So the minimum down payment for conventional, if you qualify, is 3%, and for FHA, it's 3.5%. The 3% is typically you have to fit into the area median income for conventional, which is a product that's offered through Home Ready and Home Possible. Those are conventional products that offer 3% down payments through Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. FHA, FHA is 3.5%. If you have a 580 or better credit score, I'm having a hard time. If you have a 580 or better credit score, but yeah, that's if you're not a first-time home buyer or you're above the area median income on conventional financing, then your down payment is 5% of the sales price. The Blackboard says, how do you shop for an agent? That is a great question. First of all, if I am the person that is helping you lend, or if I'm your lender, one of the questions I'm going to ask you is, do you have a real estate agent? If you do not have a real estate agent, I can refer you to one who I have a relationship with. I'm allowed to lend in all 50 states in DC, and I have connections in all 50 states in DC, right? That's one way to get your lender from having an agent is getting a referral from your real estate agent, from your lender. Another way is to potentially get a referral from a family friend or a friend or coworker, or you can go online and just kind of see and put in real estate agent in New York, New York. And then you'll probably get a million agents in New York. And then you just kind of figure out who does what. Sometimes, so what people don't understand is interview the agent the same way you interview a lender or you interview anybody else, because all agents are not created equal. Because they have their license, all of them don't have the same understanding of the real estate business. It doesn't matter if they've been in the business 20 years or 20 months, still interview them. I know people who've been in the business for 20 years and haven't done 20 transactions. I know people who've been in the business 20 months and have done 20 transactions. So the time in the business doesn't necessarily give you skill level or ability to negotiate. How many transactions have you been a part of is key. sometimes you have agents that are super busy and they have teams and they refer you to someone on their team and they manage the team so they know what's going on in the transaction. I would also say if you have a friend, that doesn't necessarily mean they have to be the your realtor, because if they can't negotiate, it doesn't help you. If it's a family member, of course, you know, Christmas or Thanksgiving might be different, but you need somebody to work on your behalf. So you have to interview everybody. I would interview them. Just like agents say, hey, interview your lender, interview your agent. Because I've come across agents who didn't know what the heck they were doing in the transaction. And it took for me as the lender to kind of walk them through it. I take pride in helping if they're willing to accept help, but some don't because they think that they're the agent. And I've seen some agents cost their buyers deals because they didn't know how to negotiate. So I would definitely, first place is, in my opinion, go to the lender first, get pre-approved, and then get a referral from your lender. That's going to be my thing. If you already have a lender, and let's say it's a lender who doesn't know anybody for some reason, one, I would question that. Two, if not, I would go online and see who's doing what. All lenders who flash and dash, who come out of these expensive cars and dress nicely, doesn't necessarily mean they're a good agent either. So what I would do is I would take 3 agents, interview them, and tell them how they're going to help you accomplish your goal. And if you want to, potentially get references from them to see how, or look at their testimonials online. Just like you pick a restaurant, you want to see the results for Jefferson Steakhouse, take a look at their reviews and see if they have any. Because they don't have any doesn't necessarily mean that they're not a good agent. They may just not be asking for reviews. Hopefully that answered your question. That was a long-winded question, answer, but there's multiple ways. First thing, if you're my client and you need an agent, first thing, one of the things I'm gonna ask you, do you have one? If not, can I refer you one? And again, I've got connections in all 50 states as well as the District of Columbia. My husband will be on deployment when it's time to start the pre-approval process. With a power of attorney, will I be able to handle everything, or will you have to speak with him at all during the process? Power of attorney definitely helps. It allows for you to sign on his behalf. It also, you know, lets me know, you know, that I have permission to talk to you. If he has the ability to talk to me at least once, then yeah, you know, like just to kind of make sure your husband is who he is, you know, make sure I cover my bases as well. But yeah, power attorney would definitely help. Tell your husband thank you for his services, and we hope he returns home safely. But yeah, but for the rest of the time, I can definitely talk to you during the process of purchasing a home. Make sure that you have access to his documentation. His if he's still in the service, we need his service orders, which he is if he's deployed. So that's a crazy question. His service orders, a copy of his most recent pay stubs, his bank statements, W-2s, a copy of his driver's license, and another form of government ID. So just have those things available. I would make sure I get the power of attorney before he leaves. And if you want to start the process before he leaves and you definitely want to work with me, I'm willing to jump on a call with him just to introduce myself. But I've had plenty of clients whose spouse, sometimes the husband stays back, sometimes it's the wife, but they've used power of attorneys. Sometimes both were over there, and we had them have an intermediary who was a family who was doing their power of attorney for them as well. So as long as we have a power of attorney, we'll be good to go. I'm about to rent a room from a friend to avoid the $3,000 price tag to break the lease in my apartment. I'm willing to make the sacrifice, especially with the new developments coming in July 1st. I get it. NL Phillips, if you need a referral for an agent, someone to definitely help you, I can give you a referral. Would love to see how I can help you with your deal. But if you need an agent referral, I could also help you with that. And again, because the agent charges 1% doesn't necessarily mean you have to take it. So this is what I didn't skip over it. I didn't think of it this way. You're interviewing with an agent. The way that they conduct business may not line up with your pockets. So that's where you go and you interview with different agents. Now, someone like myself as a lender, I deal with a ton of agents all the time. And I understand and I know at that point, I probably have a good idea of knowing who's going to conduct business a certain way. And I would refer them to you based off what you have. I'm going to take up for agents as well. A lot of people think that all agents are greedy. They're not. They're not greedy. Do they want to be paid their fair share? Yes. So if you think about 2%, let's say they were offered 1%. 1% of $150,000 house, depending on where you live, is $1,500. They may spend that in gas and time, so they may have to ask for another 1%. That's an additional $1,500. If it's if they ask for 1% and it's 300,000, then that's $3,000. If it's 600,000, that's $6,000 at 1%. So, but I do believe there's going to be agents who have the ability to negotiate their compensation from the seller's agent. And I believe there are a lot of seller's agents who are wise enough to know I'd rather sell this house in 60 to 90 days than to have it on the market for 6 months, potentially lose the listing because I haven't sold it, all because I want to keep an additional 3% or 2% and not share it with other real estate professionals who have really willing and able buyers. NL Phillips, make sure when you do move in and rent a room with a friend that you save. If I can give you any words to the wise, continue to save your old rent payment as if you're paying it. That way you don't get too comfortable and start spending more because you don't have that additional bill. I've seen it happen far too many times, and some people say, I wish I had known that sooner. Does my experience I have an upside with the July 1st changes? Yeah, I think so. I believe, Alfonso, I believe that it's going to make agents take business more seriously and conduct business a little bit more seriously. That's on the agent side. So by them conducting business more seriously, they may see an uptick in their business and their clients. For the buyers, that is going to hold buyers accountable because they don't want to lose out on those extra fees. It's also potentially going to have them be more serious because they don't want to lose that $500,000 retainer that they've paid to a buyer's agent. So I think it'll help straighten up some things, and it may help some buyers that are not as serious get out of the market. And then that would potentially create more inventory and less competition for the people who are serious. So that's an upside. For realtors who may have to take a cut in their compensation, there could be less realtors on the market because they're not getting compensated the same. So it could be, it's going to be a rocky start for some people because they're not going to know how to navigate. And then there's going to be people who say, okay, let's get it and let's go. Another thing is a good agent may pay for themselves. You may pay the 1% or 2% that they have, but they may be able to negotiate where you can get 2%, 3% seller's assistance, or get the house, the price of the house a little lower. So the agent, if they have the ability, they may be able to negotiate and save you from having to pay extra, and show their worth. If you are looking to purchase a home for no more than $450,000, what minimum would you recommend to have liquid? Um, it's going to vary for everybody. On $450,000 house, $450,000 house, if you're doing FHA, your down payment, I gotta do the math, times 0.035. Your down payment's gonna be like $15,750. That's just the down payment. If you have a strong credit score, you won't need reserves. So you probably, in this market, you might need 30 grand, 15 for down payment, 15 for closing costs. Because remember, you're buying $450,000 house. If you're in Delaware, your taxes on a $450,000 house is going to be less than if you're in Houston, Texas, or Dallas, Texas, or New York, or New Jersey, depending on how you're taxed. So that's going to affect how much you should have for closing costs. And that's an awesome segue, because the link below, there will be a link below to a video that I did on closing costs. I don't think I've seen anybody online, I could be wrong, haven't seen all the videos, who's went through what's included in closing costs from the lender standpoint and then from the attorney standpoint. I did a video with an attorney who talked about what attorneys charge for title work and what they charge for closing costs and costs that they have to charge or they get fined, and then us as lenders, what we charge for closing costs. And that'll give you a better perspective of what closing cost is. And then again, it's going to vary and depend upon your location. Free your mindset, I would probably say maybe 30 grand, 30 grand liquid to take care of down payment and closing costs. If the seller is able to contribute to your down payment, then I would say, hey, that's more money I have left in my pocket. If they can't contribute, you are already prepared. But what I would do is, instead of trying to guess for yourself, I would get with a lender, allow for the lender to give you a game plan, and then they can give you an estimate of how much it's going to cost. Because you could still be in the same town. You could be in anywhere USA and see a house across the street from the other, or a street over, and the taxes are going to be immensely different, because one may be in city limits, one may be outside of city limits. They might be both 450, but the taxes are different, which means the closing cost is going to be different, which also means the payment's going to be different, and the homeowner's insurance could be different. Thank you, Mr. Aaron. Approved Loans makes me feel special when you got another loan officer listening to you. I appreciate it, bro. If you were a first-time home buyer like me, what would be some key metrics you would look for in an agent? Ooh, that's a good question. I wish I could give you something. I wish I could give you a what's it? Not Cash App. What's that thing called on YouTube? I forget. If I was looking for an agent, so I do look for agents. I'm not a first-time home buyer, but I do look for agents. So what I would look for is someone who has me and my family's purchase in their best interest. I'm sad. I'm sorry to say, but I need someone that's experienced. When I say experienced, I don't care how many years you've been in the business. How many transactions have you successfully gone through? That would be my other thing. And what is their schedule? What are their hours? Do I need an agent that's 24/7? No, I don't. But if my agent is not available when I need them, and I mean like available when you need to show a house, not because you want to see a house and them to pick up from their family and go show a house, that would be another thing that would be important to me. Everybody doesn't mesh. You may be a strong type A person, they may be as well, and you guys collide. So everybody's personality doesn't mesh, but you definitely want to make sure someone who has experience in negotiating contracts, someone who knows that market. You want somebody who knows the market that you're in, and then you want to have somebody who has you and your family in their best interest. Those would be the things I look for. Again, hey guys, listen. Let's say, let's say that I'm not doing your loan for whatever reason. I don't know why not, but let's say I'm not, and you want a referral for an agent, reach out to me. Reach out to me. I know a ton of real estate agents. I've been in this thing for 20 years, and I know a ton of real estate agents. I know a ton of good real estate agents. And just based by having a conversation with you and what you're looking for, I'm going to partner you with someone who's going to take good care of you. But yeah, if you need an agent, I definitely could refer you to someone in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. And if you want to see how much you can get qualified for, definitely I can help you with that. If you are looking to get pre-approved, or you have questions that you couldn't ask in the live or didn't want to look in the live, the link to get on my schedule is below. My email's below. My cell phone's below. Do me a favor and reach out to me if you have questions. And again, if you want to schedule a time and you say, hey, I've got a lender, I'm happy with them, him or her, could you refer me to an agent? I definitely would be willing to do that as well, but also give your boy a shot. The Blackboard, hopefully that answered your question. I hope that helped. And if you want more and go more in depth, do me a favor, click the link below. It'll be a link below. Get on my calendar and we can kind of talk out what you're looking for, and I can help you figure out what you're looking for, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know. What about rent to own? Ooh, I wish I could start this. Third Degree Burns, thanks for showing up, fam. I appreciate you for all the support over these last couple of years too. What about rent to own or rent to purchase program? Smart or stay away? I say stay away. I say stay away. I'm gonna tell you why I say stay away. I say stay away because, one, there's a reason why you don't qualify. If you don't qualify, if you get pre-approved through a lender and you don't qualify, then I would potentially go ahead and rent. Because what happens in the lease purchase program, you're paying extra money that goes as a down payment, that goes towards a down payment. The problem that I see with these programs, and let me be clear, it's not always the program, it's the buyers. You're in a house that you think is yours, you're comfortable, the lender gave you a game plan, the seller who's doing the lease purchase gave you, the seller with the lease purchase gave you a time frame to have things done. Typically what happens is people get comfortable, it's their house, they start spending a bunch of money because they're moving into a new house that in their mind belongs to them because they're doing a lease purchase and they'll own it one day, but they have not went through the steps on cleaning up their credit so they can get out of that lease purchase and take over ownership. Because in a lease purchase, until you take ownership and your name's on a deed, you don't own it, you're still a renter. So I would say stay away. Is there a minimum number of mortgage points most lenders will allow a borrower to pay down? No, it's not a minimum. So like when it comes to interest rates, sometimes right now there's a lot of there's a fee associated with your interest rate called discount points. If you go to a lender and say, hey, lender, if you come to me and say, hey, Kevin, can you quote me your par rate for my score? I'm going to give you the closest thing to paying nothing as possible, which is par. But however, take into consideration, if you ask for par or better, that is going to be the highest rate on the sheet. If you want to buy down your rate or get a comparable rate, there's going to be a fee associated with it. Discount points are 1% of the sales price. So it's going to depend on what your sales price is. If you're at 200,000 and you're looking, and it takes you 3 points to buy down your rate to where you want it to be, that's $6,000, right? Around $6,000. But if you're at $600,000 and you want to buy it down, it costs 3 points. That's $18,000. Huge difference. As a lender myself, if a buyer tries to buy the rate down too far, I'm gonna have a conversation with them and show them how long it would take for them to recoup those funds. Sometimes you have to do it and buy down rates a little bit that cost for you to qualify for the home. And sometimes I have people who want to qualify for a home decide, hey, I'm going to put down a larger down payment, when in fact a larger down payment does not necessarily mean that you are going to still qualify. From my experience, buying down the rate has a greater effect on your home purchase than has a far greater rate on your home purchase and what you qualify for and what your payment is than putting down a larger deposit. A couple more questions and then it's getting late. My Cali people must be out here. Should we schedule a consultation with you prior to applying, planning to apply? Yes, I prefer to have a conversation with the buyers before they apply, and I'll tell you why. So when I'm looking at your application, I have some framework of what it is, the goal we're trying to accomplish. Sometimes people go to the application and I see the name and I'll reach out and call. But for the most part, yes, schedule a consultation. And once we finish the consultation, if we decide it's a right fit for us to work together or it makes sense to start the process now, I will send you a link to my online application as well as a set of documents that will be in the body of the email that we need to finish the pre-approval. What's the minimum credit score you recommend to get a good mortgage rate? I'm gonna say 640. Now you'll probably hear, oh, you know, the best way to get the best rate, you need to have a 740. That's potentially true. But sometimes the 640 and the 740 get the same interest rate. The only difference they have is how much they have to pay for discount points. The other thing is if you decide to wait until you get the 740 credit score, how long is that going to take? Is it going to take 6 months? Is it going to take a year? If it takes a year, did interest rates go up? Did they go down? Are you paying the same thing you would have paid? Or are you paying more? Did housing prices go up? But to get a decent, you know, interest rate, 640, 660. It also depends on your debt to income ratio and if you have any reserves. So all of those things go into play. You can have a 700 credit score and no money, you're a higher risk. You're still a higher risk because you don't have any reserves or money left over. Hey guys, this has been great. I appreciate it. If you are new to the channel, do me a huge favor, give me a thumbs up. If you think that this video was worth your time, I appreciate it. Give me a thumbs up as well. Also do me a huge favor if you're new to the channel and hit the subscribe button. Please hit the subscribe button so you get notifications when I go live. I got a couple action items for you guys before we go. If you want to join my Facebook group, the link will be below. Also, my free newsletter, the link will be below. Please, 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 because we're talking about the cost of buyers, watch the video. The link is going to be below the video to what the true cost of closing cost is from a lender's perspective, as well as from an attorney's perspective. And we did an interview style. We both went over what it would cost or what potential costs or things that we charge. And if you want to get on my schedule and do a consultation, definitely reach out to me, grab a call, and let's see how we can get you in a home and become a homeowner. What is the latest we're able to schedule consult? We have a big time difference. It's 10 a.m. Wednesday here. It's a good question. Purple Heart, do me a favor, send me an email and we can discuss. I make arrangements for people as well. Sounds like you're out of the country if it's 10 a.m. where you are. So let's make some arrangements on how I can help you guys. Again, guys, I appreciate you. Thank you. Good night and God bless.